Hey everybody, welcome to another live stream. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn also because we're going to be doing updates before live on here so that you don't miss us. Today we have a really cool topic. Last time we talked about um, how a lot of things in AI are converging, and today we're going to talk about differing opinions on the future of AI. So it's really interesting. Just in the last week, there's been a number of articles that all came out this past week from very influential people in the artificial intelligence community talking about where they think AI is headed. So it's really cool. And what we're going to do is chat about these articles briefly. We're going to highlight common themes that run through them and differences that run through them. And at the end, we'll sort of summarize where things are at, and then we will take Q&A. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So the first article is from a publication called SiliconANGLE, and it's out of Silicon Valley, as you might guess. And this article talks about 7 ways that artificial intelligence could evolve. And the first one is augmented intelligence, which means complementary, supporting and enhancing human intelligence. So this is AI-enabled interfaces that are non-invasive, like holograms and interactive visualizations, it says. So this is not anything that goes in your body or anything. It's just things that can exist to help you learn something or do something. And this is really cool. Augmented reality is a great instance of this. So the way augmented reality is going to work, and it's starting to roll out, is on your glasses, you'll have AR. And let's say you're a tourist in Paris. While you're walking around Paris, your glasses with AR are going to tell you what you're looking at, what the historical significance of it is, what you might want to see next, stuff like that. This is going to be awesome technology. I can't wait for AR to get out and get going. That's number 1 of 7. Number 2, generative AI improving agency and emotion. So one aspect of this we've done several videos on lately, including the dating video, Would You Date an AI? Because emotion AI is getting much, much better. There's a reason for that, and we're going to start to tie all that together through the common elements running through all these articles. But generative AI is the ability for machines to produce completely original and realistic structures, designs, and even art, which is starting to roll out, and also emotion, right? So generative AI has limitations and also concerns for potential fraudulent use like deepfakes. This is a downside of generative AI. Then the next one is called composite AI, which is going beyond machine learning. So it's a combination of machine learning and deep learning and other things like graph analytics. It's often used to combine data with knowledge sources such as human reasoning or causality, why something is happening, stuff like that. Next one, steroid AI, which is more and more powerful hardware. This is one of our unifying themes with these different opinions that we're talking about today. Next, transcendent intelligence, which is a synergy of humans and AI. Now, this is the next step, like Elon Musk company for the brain-computer interface that's implanted in your head. That's what transcendent intelligence is, at least in the definition of these articles. A lot of these terms are brand new or evolving or not agreed on yet, but this is how this particular article characterizes them. Next is autonomous AI, which is, sorry, AI and robotics. And we've done many videos on this. AI and robotics are complementary exponential technologies. They are going to help each other grow and get better and better. And so that is autonomous AI. A fully autonomous robot driven by AI is what this is inferring. And then there's artificial general intelligence, AGI, which they label as an elusive pipe dream. And I did a recent video about a potential breakthrough by DeepMind that they believe is a bridge step to AGI from where we are now. So that's sort of like forecasting the future, that article, where there's seven different areas that AI is going to grow and develop in. Almost all of those are in process right now. The only one that is not is artificial general intelligence. It's too early for that, but it will get there. Then the next article is on a topic that we really haven't talked about before. This magazine is called NextGov, and we have not talked about use of AI in governments. This is a big area and a very, very important area. So I'm just going to do a highlight of a couple of things in this article right now, but I am not going to get into the full implications of AI use in government because that's complicated and controversial. But this talks about how AI is being used right now or going to be used. And one of the agencies that they talk about AI becoming more and more used is the US Postal Service. Why? Because they have hundreds of millions of customers. They have a current and continuing problem of misdirected mail, and AI can help with that quite a bit. Another area is that the Department of Health and Human Services. So there's a lot of AI-driven wearables related to health right now. Apple Watch, Google Watch, Fitbit, Aura Ring, which is the one that I use. There's many, many of these, but DHS wants to start using these tools to create aggregate health data to help the general public be more healthy. And they're looking at lifestyle, diet, a bunch of stuff. Now, obviously, there's a lot of questions about privacy with regard to the application that I just mentioned by the Department of Health and Human Services. So the government, specifically the Biden administration, has started building a framework about the proper use of AI in government. And as I said, this is a big topic, and I don't want to get into this today because it's not the main point of what we're doing today. But suffice it to say, I've talked in a different video about how the EU, the European Union, has draft regulations in place to prohibit use of AI in certain circumstances where human beings will be harmed. And health data is certainly one of them. So we got a couple more articles, and then we're going to put a bow on the themes running through this. The next one is from a publication called BBN Times, and this is an interview called AI and the Future of Work, which is our main theme here at the AI Guide, right? Because I'm trying to give you guys the tools, resources, and knowledge you're going to need to survive the AI wave that's on the way. And the guy that they're interviewing in this is Scott Bolland. You can look him up. He is famous in AI circles. So, who is he? He says, I'm not your typical AI researcher and practitioner, even though I've been in the field for 25 years, because I have a PhD not only in programming, but also in cognitive science, which is the study of how the mind works. And that PhD area covers psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, and artificial intelligence all together. So this guy has a pretty unique view of artificial intelligence and psychological impact and how it's going to affect jobs. So this guy, Scott Bolland, says, one group to follow and check out is Katja Grace, who is with the Future of Humanity Institute at the University of Oxford in England. And the gist of this part of the interview is that these guys are saying that the AI experts, when they're surveyed, believe that it's going to take longer for a lot of the things that we talk about here on the AI Guide to actually come to fruition. I'm going to disagree with that, and I'll tell you why later. But this is one of his general theses, is that people believe that AI is coming a lot faster than it is. My view is more nuanced, having spent 20 plus years in designing, developing, and implementing computer systems, managing IT teams, and staying on the cutting edge business wise of computer technology. I think that some areas are going to get hit fast and others will take longer. One of them I just said is going to take longer is AGI, and I think there's general agreement on that. But I'll give you more of my opinion right at the end. But for example, they predict about another 100 years for all jobs to be fully automated, meaning humans don't work anymore. Maybe that's true. That's so far away with how quickly technology is speeding up. It's difficult to say, but that might be right. But they talk about some things that are only a few years away, like replacing retail salespeople. I've talked about robots in Starbucks, right? Writing a New York Times bestseller, they've got it about 30 years, and same with replacing a surgeon with a fully robotic AI-driven surgeon. So some of these things that are pretty complex, maybe 30 years. I think it'll be a bit faster than that. And again, I'll get into why. The next thing they talk about that ties into an article, the first article we talked about is computing power. Computing power has been the gateway to A, a working neural net, and B, making AI exponential. Cloud computing. I just posted a short today about how many jobs are available right now in the hardware side of AI, managing cloud computing, managing AI servers. That's going to take humans for the foreseeable future. And so this is really a discussion of how computing power has facilitated AI, which is a common theme in all of these articles, that this has been the trigger for working AI, which which totally works now, right? Um, there's the story that your Apple cell phone today is as powerful as all of the computers that President Bill Clinton had access to for the whole government when he was president in the late 90s. So that kind of profound computing power breakthrough has enabled AI on your phone, Siri, whatever they have on Google, stuff like that. Um, the next is AI and automation, and I've talked a bunch about warehouses, and the specific example they give is Alibaba's warehouse, which is the Chinese competitor to Amazon, um, since there's a hard wall between China and the rest of the world on technology, especially now. But Alibaba's warehouses are now 70% fully robotic. It's not much to get from 70 to 100%. That is a quick thing to happen. And I've had questions from people about warehouses specifically. Warehouses are going to be rapidly automated now. However, they still will need humans there. Why? A warehouse manager to oversee the system and maintenance people to work on all the robots and stuff like that. So people will still be involved, but um, the task of the robot storing goods, pulling them off the shelf, packaging for shipping, and loading the shipment on the truck, all automated in the near future. The next thing this guy talks about in this long article, and I'll link all these once the video is posted, they talk about fast brick robotics building houses. I'm going to do a more detailed video on this probably this week, certainly by the following week, because I've got a backlog of stuff right now. But they have AI-driven robots that can now build complete houses. This is a huge change in the construction industry, and they are also using robots like this in limited ways in commercial construction for skyscrapers and factories and stuff like this, but that's going all robotic in 15 years, I'm going to say. Then they talk about Boston Robotics, which we've talked about a bunch, but if you look at Boston Robotics videos from 2018 to 2021, the dramatic acceleration of the sophistication of robotics in a very, very short period of time, 3 years. It's stunning. And then he goes on to talk about impact of artificial intelligence in the workforce. And basically, he goes on to say that the jobs that are going to be automated first are the ones that are manual tasks. Now, there are manual jobs that are still not going to be automated quickly. I've mentioned a couple of them, being an electrician, being a plumber. It's going to take a while to automate that kind of stuff. Those are great, high-paying jobs that you can get without having to go to college, and resistant to automation, so relatively AI safe. And then he talks about decision making, creativity, and a bunch of other stuff. This article is about 20 pages. It's too long to do in full here, but we've seen common themes from the first two articles between those, and some of the things we've been talking about here on the AI Guide, plus commonalities and differences between these articles. So far, the commonalities are computing power, other exponential technologies like robotics, and the neural net being a breakthrough. Differences are how soon automation is going to happen, how much it's going to affect the labor force, and so forth. But now a special treat, because this just came out. It was just posted 2 days ago. It only had a few views on it on TED. So this was really fortunate. But Jeff Dean, head of Google AI, was at TED in July of 2021 in Monterey, California, and he gave a presentation. And I'm going to run through this thing because this guy is at the forefront of everything that's happening. And so uh, he's the source, right, for where things are at and where they're going, in addition to these other people who are also very well known. But um, basically, Jeff Dean talks about AI has been around for a long time, but it really wasn't meaningful until two things happened in the last 15 years. And it's actually, no, it's right about 15 years. The first is cloud computing. Cloud computing first came on the scene about 15 years ago. We've talked about these other articles and how computing power was the enabling factor for AI to be useful, along with better programming techniques. But even with the better programming techniques, it could not be done without the computing power. So cloud computing, and then neural nets, which is not even 15 years old. It's not even 10 years old. The first working neural net was created. The first neural net was created back in the 60s, but it didn't work. And the first working neural net took all the way from the 60s to 2012. And then it was perfected between 2012 and 2015. And that's when we saw Deep Blue starting in 2015. And then and AlphaGo and all this stuff has come since then. So we're talking less than 10 years, total breakthrough. So Jeff Dean also says that one of the other reasons that AI was very, very slow to develop was because at first they tried to hand code all the algorithms, which is super difficult. It's very, very difficult to hand code an algorithm that can view hundreds of thousands of images and find something common in them. So he talks about, as I said, computing power in the neural net. And then what he said is that this is the way that a neural net really works. A neural net, you have a number of inputs. It could be 10, it could be 100, it could be 1,000. Whatever inputs you're going to use, you put all those in, and what determines the outcome is the weights that each input is given, and that has to be tested by trial and error until you get the desired result you're looking for. So I told you guys when I attended the Applied Artificial Intelligence Conference in 2018, which was 3.5 years ago now, only 3.5 years ago, but complete breakthroughs in AI since that conference. They had the head of Facebook AI at that conference, and he was explaining how they had just gotten their algorithm to reliably pick cats out of pictures. So go from that to algorithms today, only 3 years later, that can predict the structure of protein folding. It's beyond belief, really, what's happened in a very short period of time. So he said the purpose is to drive the overall system toward your desired behavior that you're looking for. And it's very interesting because Jeff Dean was working on his PhD at the University of Minnesota in 1990. And when they first tried to do this kind of really predictive machine learning, he said that they used 32 processors, uh, early GPU units at the time, to facilitate making this thing work, but it didn't really work. He said that it took from 1990 to 2005, why cloud computing, to have the processing power that was needed to make a neural net work or start to work. So the very first system that they built was in around '05, and this he's talking about Google because he's head of Google AI by '05, was scanning millions of YouTube uh, videos and picking out common things, and the thing it picked out in common is cats because people post shitloads of cat videos for whatever reason. Um, and he said that as computing power got sophisticated enough, which I just talked about a minute ago, that's when Google Maps started to work, and Siri started to work, and document search started to work, and all this stuff. So the improvements were hardware driven. But he said the cool thing about neural nets is that for them to work, they don't need to go to 5 to 7 decimal places, like very, very small numbers. They only need to go down to 2 decimal places, just like money, for them to work right, which is why they actually do work now when they still wouldn't work if they needed to go to these extreme measures of precision. But I talked about this in another video recently, that Google has started to invent its own GPUs, which TPU-1 was only in 2013. They call it Tensor Processing Unit. Um, and he said that it's only in these last few years that as they've gone from TPU-1, now they're at TPU-4. I just did a short on that, I think, that has dramatically increased computing power for AI and has led to a lot of the breakthroughs they're having. But he wraps up, Jeff Dean does, by saying that the way AI is being done and has been done is wrong in direction terms for two reasons. One is that today's neural nets can do one thing and only one thing. They cannot do general tasks. They are made to do a very, very specific task, which might be search all documents for discussions of proteins and then synthesize that data on protein research. One thing. So he said, you in the end, you really don't want that. What you want is a multitask model that has different parts, each that's specialized, but they can all work together and learn from each other. This is not existing yet. It will be. And the other way in which today's neural nets are limited is they can only deal with one type of data. So they scan videos, they scan books, they scan only one thing and can only solve for one problem. So he said, similar to wanting to develop algorithms that can multitask, you want ones that can pull in multiple sources of data at once. And then his third was today's models are too dense. That means, he says, that once you build a neural net, it's fully activated at all times. It does not work like the human brain. The human brain does not work fully activated all the time. whatever task you're doing activates a very specific part of your brain. And this is well proven at this point. So there's a very small center in your brain to process eyesight, another one to process sound through hearing, another one to process uh, input through your eyes. Neural nets don't work that way. They're all on, but he said they need to work like the human brain does, where a different one type of input would activate only one thread of a neural network. Um, so he said, this is where we, Google, are trying to go. We're trying to go to a multitasking AI that can take multiple inputs and only the relevant part of the AI is activated at the time to solve um, that particular question. And it really, really struck me watching this YouTube talk. And I strongly urge you to watch this TED talk because Jeff Dean gives the simplest, most concise definition of a neural net and how it works and what it does that I've ever seen anyone give. It was so phenomenal. But he goes on to talk about, AI has to be used responsibly and how Google has built a framework that it uses uh, to do all AI development. But the guy who runs TED, who is a triple sharp guy, brilliant, right, to come up with that idea, what a genius. Um, he asked Jeff Dean some questions at the end, like, it's nice to have this framework, but do you actually do it? And I'll tell you why that's relevant. Because this stuff that Jeff Dean talks about, an AI algorithm that can multitask, take multiple inputs, and only use the very specific part of the neural net that it needs to solve a problem. What does that sound like? Artificial general intelligence. They are trying to build AGI. And we all know now that this is problematic, and we know why it is. Elon Musk has been very clear on this point, along with Stephen Hawking and a bunch of other people. This is a Pandora's box. How do you control AGI? How do you understand how it gets to its conclusion that it got to? What if it concludes something unfortunate for human beings? So it strikes me that it's nice that Chris, the guy who founded TED, says, it's nice to have a framework, but are you actually following it? And are you actually going to follow it? And are you actually not going to launch a technology that causes mass societal problems? Um, that is a extremely important and valid question. Final thing before we get to Q&A, also out just this past week, and originally I was going to do a short on it, but it ties directly into today's topic, whereas AI headed, is Intel unveils 12th generation Intel Core processor, 12th generation. Wow. Um, it includes Intel Core i9 12900K GPU, which will be the world's best gaming processor. So it's very interesting. Clearly, out of all these articles, where is AI headed? First, we know that computing power is still growing rapidly. Moore's law is still in effect. Intel is releasing the latest super powerful GPU. If computing power is an enabling technology of AI, which it is, as long as computing power stays on its exponential path, AI will stay on its exponential path. The second thing that's common throughout all these articles is neural nets. Neural nets is the breakthrough. Machine learning is great for a specific task, but it cannot find commonality in massive input of millions of YouTube videos, for example, the way a neural net can. So neural nets are a breakthrough, and they're not the last breakthrough, but they're the current breakthrough. So that's common. What isn't common? Real disagreement about timetables. I'm going to tell you why I think the people who think this is going to take a really long time to automate a bunch of jobs are off. The main reason is that this is proven, humans are very, very poor at predicting the future. And they usually seriously underestimate how fast stuff is going to happen. This is scientific research, it's been proven. So, given that, and given the fact of the last live I did a month ago that talks about how fully autonomous vehicles are going to be on the roads in high number in 2023, 18 months from now. I just think that the idea that tens of millions of jobs in the US alone are not going to be automated by 2030 is off. That's exactly what's going to happen, in my opinion. And that translates to hundreds of millions of jobs globally. I actually just realized what the next live is going to be on, and it'll be a very interesting topic. But let's get to Q&A before we have to wrap up because we're already over. So I've got some great questions. The first is from DRS. Thank you, DRS, for your question. You're a regular participant. I really love that. Thanks a lot. Will I do a discussion on walk-in retail stores without cashiers? Yeah, I will do that. I can do that as part of the topic I just thought of for the next video, or I can do it on one of my regular videos, but there's a lot of that already going on courtesy of Amazon. But yeah, I can do that, DRS, and we'll do that. Your last comment at the end is UBI will be necessary. 100%. There's simply no doubt about that. There will be too many problems not to have UBI by 2030. It will be mandatory by then. Other questions from B. First question, why isn't AI already super intelligent? There's a bunch of reasons for that, and Jeff Dean talked about some of that, but I'll throw in a couple other things. One is computing power. This is me. Computing power isn't quite there yet for superintelligence. This is why I do videos on quantum computing, because quantum computing is in its infancy, but once it gets to commercialization, it will be an enabling technology for superintelligence and AI. And you say, I thought it can learn on its own, and with simulations, it should be able to learn everything in weeks or months. Well, going back to what Jeff Dean said at TED, current neural nets and AI algorithms are created to solve one problem. So they can only solve that one problem, and they can only solve that problem with good data and labeled data. Now, I have talked about the beginning of no-code AI is just starting. That will open the door to what you're saying, where it really can learn more on its own, because if people don't have to do the coding, then AI will be more self-learning than it is now. But according to Jeff Dean, who should know, not quite there yet. Next question. We can teach AI through having it watch us do things. Yes. Yeah, there's great point. There's a lot of chatter online now about problems with my Echo Dot, Alexa listening to me, Siri listening to me, Google Home listening to you, whatever your preference is in terms of home tech. But the answer is yes. These things are picking up all this data and they are going to do something with it. And I did a separate video about a robot that Toyota is nearing perfection on. Yes, the car company that will be able to clean up after dinner, put the dishes in the dishwasher, run the dishwasher, unload it, put your dishes in your cabinet, stuff like that. So, yes, you have a great point. AI can learn from us, and with an agile robot, which is starting to exist right now, Boston Dynamics. Go look at those videos. Yes, your home robot, which will be around shortly, will learn from you and take over tasks, including vacuuming difficult areas and all kinds of stuff. Next question. Do you think the supply chain problems and worker shortages across the world are being intentionally created to give them an excuse to start replacing us with automation? Sounds like the Great Reset. Thank you for your comments. Yes, another important point, but for a little bit different reason than you're suggesting. So, as you know from what I said earlier in this live, I work in corporate America. The company I work for right now has a severe labor shortage. We're short 30 people that we need. And we've been short those 30 people for the last 2+ years. A lot of this automation is happening at the beginning now, not to replace people, but to replace the shortage of workers. That's a serious problem for companies. Um, this is one of the major reasons why there are supply chain problems and why you see empty spaces on shelves in the grocery stores or Target or Walmart or whatever is because, and this is look at the videos of what is happening in the UK and Europe right now with cardboard cutouts of fake food on the shelves because there's no real food. This is labor shortage. So, to the degree that companies can automate this shortage, that's why they're doing it. A perfect example that I've talked about a number of times that is already starting to be remedied, but will be dramatically uh, changed over the next 2 years only, is trucking. They have been 30,000 people short of the number of truckers they need in the US for many years now, at least 10 years. And so this is a good reason why automation is happening because they got to make up the shortage somehow. And that's how this automation will be used at first. So the first iteration is the long haul all the way across the country on the freeway. That is something that can be automated from the point where the truck gets on the on ramp to the freeway and gets off 1,000 miles later. That's easy to automate. It's much harder to automate moving a semi around city streets and backing it up to a loading dock. So, first, easy stuff. Second, harder stuff. But over time, once this really gets traction, then it'll switch from curing the labor shortage to intentionally displacing people, as you said, B. And that is why, as DRS said, UBI will be mandatory. Okay, do you think AI will control the stock market someday and create some sort of resource management allocation utopia? Uh, well, the news on that front is simpler. AI is already controlling the stock market. Roughly 90% plus of the trading that happens every day on the stock market today is done by hedge funds and investment banks using algorithms. No humans, all fully automated. Uh, and the reason why is because, let's say you're you can trade, make a trade for a penny profit, but that penny profit is on 10 million shares. That's 100 grand, and if you do that all day, you've made hundreds of millions of dollars. This is where trading is at. That's why um, I am not giving financial advice by what I'm about to say. I have to be completely clear. I'm not giving financial advice, but this is why everyone these days who does give personal financial advice says, number one, you cannot outpick the stock pickers. You can't do that. So number two, get either a lifestyle fund or a fund that mirrors the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq 1000 or whatever benchmark you want to mirror. But active trading, unless you work at an investment bank, is a sucker's game already. And the reason why is because of AI. So, great question. Um, Cool. Well, we're pretty far over, but this has been a great session. Thank you so much for all your questions. I will post the video shortly, and then when I post the video, I will put the links to this article. But the TED Talk by Jeff Dean, go see that. The longer article with the interview of Scott Bolland is really meaningful and helpful. Um, Also, if you haven't done it already, click the link below the video that will be there to get your free AI resource where you can learn more about the stuff we just talked about today, absolutely for free, multiple options, all free, no reason not to get this resource. And we're going to have higher level resources coming out shortly, uh, some of which will be free, some of which will be paid. But thank you so much to my viewers. Thank you to the 100 new subscribers in the last month. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments on the videos. I'm doing this all for you guys. Number one, to give you the knowledge about AI so that you will understand what's coming and be prepared. And then secondly, start to give you resources that will help you be in an AI safe career, because I don't want you guys to go through unemployment, extended periods of unemployment, which can threaten your retirement and all kinds of bad stuff. Yes, one day UBI will be there, but we're not there yet, and we're not going to be there for a while. The political will, it'll take some of the trauma that's coming to create the political will to do it. So, again, thank you so much. And you guys take care, be safe, and we'll see you in about a month for another live stream, but 2 videos a week. One when we do a live stream like this, but 2 most weeks, and then the shorts and more resources coming. Thanks.